What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Welcome back. Happy, what is it, Tuesday? Wednesday. Wow. All right. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for coming. And today we are talking about some interesting stuff that's happening in the market. It seems like this is a little bit of a calm before the storm, if you will. I think that's what I would call it. Everything's really gearing up for next week, which is blockchain week in New York City. Consensus, we talked about that yesterday. And I think we're seeing that in the price to a certain extent. So I want to talk a little bit about that and a couple pieces of news that I think would be interesting. But for the most part, just give you the highlights, give you the stuff that really matters for you guys, give you some updates, some things I'm thinking about, and go from there. All right? So, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. That always helps. We've been looking at this triangle for a little while. It's proven to consistently be, or I should say in the last week or so, a pretty good area of interest when we're looking at big price moves. And I think that one theme that we brought up yesterday that I'm going to continue to harp on is in situations like this, sticking to the higher time frames, in this case the 4 hour, because often when you get too zoomed in, we do it in order to create a more volatile environment, right? Similar to what we talked about yesterday with altcoins, and we talked about in the macro scheme of things, volatility is often created so that there's a way to get more return on investments in a stagnant situation or let's call a low yield situation. And I think that that's what happens with shorter time frames. And, that's just one of those things. So that's why I always recommend going a little bit zoomed out, you can start to see some bigger patterns here or some more important ones. And we're bouncing out of this zone. We're staying above this trend line. And so this is a good sign. Remember, we talked about this is something we really want to see. You go into the 1 hour. You're starting to see a little bit of resistance here. As you can see, this level from the 7th, right around 93.50, give or take. I mean, there's kind of a whole range in here. This is proven very, very recently to be a resistance and support level. So it's no doubt we'll probably see some pushback here. The key, though, is do we get pushback and does it bounce around and then continue up? Or do we get pushback and then we come back down and then test this line once again, which, it is what it is. It's not ideal, but it's a possibility. So until we get through this, until we get through 9,300, really until we get past up to 94.75 and then kind of onward and upward, and then hopefully once above 10,000, we're going to see some chop. I don't think that we're going to blast through this anytime soon unless there's some crazy news. So I think the timing will probably match up pretty well to next week. Got to keep an eye on that. But in my opinion, I just don't see any really terrific high risk reward setups for either way, like for a long position or a short position. And because of that, I'm pretty happy just staying on the sidelines. Honestly, the best things, the hardest things to do, but also the best training that I've learned is to not do anything. And when I do trade, or when I feel like trading, I have demo accounts, and that's where I do a majority of what I do. But it is proven to be a very good exercise to not do anything, especially when you have time to do it, right? This is one of the things that I spend most hours of the day learning about crypto or trading or investing or managing existing stuff that I have. And so when you have that time to fill, you got to be very careful about how you fill your time. So we're going to watch this. This whole area is really kind of a wait and see, just because there's so much chop that we got to get through. Stay above this green line. Once we get there, once we get into next week, that's when we're going to see some kind of newfound action happening. The only thing that could happen in the meantime is tonight, I believe, or maybe this afternoon, or probably tonight, Coinbase and slash GDAX, which does not do the biggest volume by any means. And I don't want to make it sound like they're the center of the universe. They are doing scheduled maintenance on their servers. And right, they've had a lot of news coming out. They're doubling their trading capacity. We're going right into consensus week. A lot of these ERC20 tokens are getting a lot of potential rumors around them. I'm not saying anything is going to happen, but it is interesting the way that the timing works out. Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, has been publishing a lot of posts recently to kind of prime the engines for what would look like some new things coming out. So that could be something that could, in fact, blast us through the natural grind that we would need to get back up to 10,000. That's something that could easily spike us. But you can't bank on that. That's not a trading strategy. That's just kind of a be ready in case something good happens. So that's what we're looking at with Bitcoin. Now let's refresh here on Brave browser, supporting the blockchain community. We're kind of seeing, a little bit of what we saw yesterday. I'm not necessarily eyeing any altcoins right now, other than watching some of the trends. And so something you guys can do, or anybody can do, is when you notice certain coins having consistent wins, take a few minutes and drill into it and look at all the different potential reasons for that. For example, let's say like Zilliqa is one example where they've been on a tear recently. You look at Augur and Ethos. All right, so let's just do one of these as an example. I think that would really be helpful for a lot of people. So let's say Zilliqa. Zilliqa is obviously like a blockchain technology, or a platform, I should say, a protocol level. And you could see that it was an ICO. Many people, hopefully many of you guys, got in there, had some massive returns, and now it's got a 1.2 billion market cap. Now, just using that as a benchmark, I'm not saying it's anything more than that, but how would you find out, okay, well, what's really going on? Well, the first thing you would do is you could just look on CoinMarketCap and get a sense of what is this price, how does it relate to the volume? The volume is down here. So you can see that the volume has a lot of peaks and valleys. It's not a steady increase. So there's clear moments that are driving big influxes in volume, and then there's valleys that are continuing to cause the price to increase. So something caused, I would say, let's look at early April 9th, something triggered a huge uptick in volume. And in my opinion, this is not market wide. I don't necessarily believe that all of this volume is just naturally popping up. So what I would do is I would go over to the markets tab, and I would look through where it's being listed. So it's on Binance, which is fine. It's on Huobi, it's on Gate.io, both of which are Chinese exchanges. These two exchanges are notorious for having a lot of bot and fake volume. So that would be really interesting. So what I would do is I would go and I would research Binance, Huobi, and Gate.io, and I would find out the dates that those were all listed. I would go find out when exactly when Zilliqa was listed on those exchanges, and I would see if that is an outlier, right? Because if it's listed on, if like let's say April 22nd, if that was when it was listed on Huobi, for example, that could account for this particular spike in volume. And then you would go down the list. So you'd find out, where does that volume come from? You can go down that rabbit hole as much as you want. Okay, well, a lot of this volume is coming from Tether volume on Huobi. Okay, well, that seems kind of weird. Can I find out more about how they're listing other Tether coins? Is this a similar pattern on the exchange? Is it unique to Zilliqa? So there's a lot you can do just by analyzing the price and the volume and the exchanges and seeing the nature. Is there a pattern? Is there something going on with a group of people that is trying to push the price up inorganically, right? They're trying to make the price bigger and bigger artificially in one way. So that's the first place I would look. The second place is obviously go through all their social media. You can see the tab here. So I'll look through their Twitter. I'd probably jump into their Telegram. I would look on Reddit. I would go through as much as I could, and then I would probably ask a lot of other people, hopefully people that have been following Zilliqa pretty closely, people that have been there in the ICO, and ask them, hey, what have you seen? What are some of the biggest events, or what are the big things that you've seen in the last few weeks and that people are really talking about? That's going to shorten my learning curve. I don't have to go figure it out myself. People that have been following this, I can just go to them, right? And you can find those people in the Telegram groups, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, go anywhere, and you can build relationships with people that way. So that's the other way. Then the third thing I would probably do is I would pull this up on the chart, because Binance is on TradingView, and I would just start to chart it out, and I would look and see if there's any sort of just natural chart structure that could create a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if a certain number of people are all looking at the chart, there's an ideal chart set up, enough people start buying it, that can be a trigger to push it up, etc., etc., etc. But I would keep digging and keep digging, knowing that there might not be an exact answer, but at the very least, I could have a much better, more informed decision of this 18.15% increase in price that's happened and that's consistently happening each day. And I wouldn't just be blindly throwing money into it. I would have a thesis behind why I'm throwing money into it. And that makes a big difference, because then you have a loose sense of what your relative value of your price is. Meaning, am I getting a good deal, or am I at the tail end of this, right? An example of that would be if there is a rumor going around that Zilliqa is going to go on Coinbase. That's not, I'm just making this up, right? And that was the news was going to come out on May 11th. And that's what was driving all of this. And I bought tomorrow without knowing that piece of information. Chances are it's probably going to dump on the 11th. You really get hosed because you didn't do that research on that. So that's just a very quick and dirty example. You can do that with almost any coin. It takes a little while to do, but you get better at it. You learn how to do it. There's no blueprint, there's no system to do it. You do have to do some investigative work and figure it out yourself. But it can be very much worth your time, right? And it can help a lot as you make your decisions. So let's switch over to a couple pieces of news that I thought were interesting and things that I think are worth keeping in mind. So Galaxy Digital Capital Management, I guess, which is Mike Novogratz' fund. They just released an index fund, or benchmark index. So it starts as a benchmark index, which is going to be partnered with Bloomberg. Bloomberg is important because they have the terminal, and more importantly, they have the distribution where they have a data feed that is probably the most used data feed by traders, investors, institutions, everyone. That's the de facto. And so by being integrated into that, they get exposure to that huge network. It's a very big deal for a variety of reasons. And they're going to turn this into an index fund, which is going to take a basket of coins, basically the top market cap coins. It's going to weight them based on what their relative market cap is. Loosely speaking, it's not an exact weighting. And then it's going to create a fund that will mirror that price index. So if they take this blend of weighted cryptos and they run their calculations, they're going to come up with a price. Let's say it's 227.6 is today's cryptocurrency weighted index price for the Galaxy benchmark index, right? That's the price, and it'll move accordingly based on the market. Now, this is very different than what we talked about yesterday, because this doesn't actually buy any crypto. Yesterday, the New York Stock Exchange, or I should say the ICE one, who owns the New York Stock Exchange, that does have physical settlement. You own crypto. That is a very, very bullish signal. This is less so. And look, I'm a huge Novogratz. I love these guys. I think it's great what they're doing. But realize that when you create an ETF, an exchange-traded fund, which is essentially what this is going to become, you don't necessarily boost the value of the underlying assets. It's a product. This is why a TD Ameritrade or Fidelity or any of these companies, the people that make a lot of the money they're out there selling the products to people, right? This is just like that pinned tweet I have. It's like they buy the infrastructure, or they buy it OTC, they build the infrastructure, they create the products, then they go out and sell the products to people, which inevitably brings in retail investors to buy it on the exchange, that's what really drives the price up, not these index funds. So while I do think this is helpful, it's good because it makes it easier to buy exposure to the crypto market. It doesn't directly impact the supply and demand curve, which is one of those things where this is the kind of stuff where we're going to look back at 2018. They're going to say the crypto market is worth $3 trillion now, but the price of Bitcoin might not have actually moved that much. I mean, hopefully it will. I think it will move a lot, but it's because of this. Like, this could be worth $1 billion without any prices having to move, because people can just buy the fund. They could buy into the index, and it just pegs it to a price. It doesn't actually buy the stuff, right? So this is a big deal. It's really important to know these differentiators, so that you don't get caught up supporting the wrong horse in many ways. And I hope these guys do well. I think it's great for marketing, but we need more people to own crypto and buy physical crypto or private keys, not just exposure to crypto. All right, I thought this was really interesting. An ex-Goldman Sachs president, Gary Cohn, actually was was previously in the administration, the presidential administration here in the United States, and he left, obviously. He thinks that there's going to be a global crypto, and it won't be Bitcoin. He's kind of in the conservative camp of, hey, I'm bullish on Bitcoin, but not I'm bullish on blockchain, but not on Bitcoin type of thing. But he's saying, hey, there's going to be an international crypto at some point. And this is really interesting because I think that when you look, for anybody who's interested in macro stuff, and you start to follow a lot more people in macro and read a lot more about global macro stuff, it really is all about currencies is the big stuff, a little bit about commodities, but it's about geopolitics, currencies, debt, credit, debt cycles, business cycles, things like that. And the big threat, right, that's the looming thing that is pending the next big financial crisis, global financial crisis, really comes down to central banks and what they've done with interest rates. And as many of you know, things like printing money, having negative interest rates, which all really comes down to debt and things like that. Excuse me. Issuing a sovereign crypto is a very interesting way to get around a lot of these problems that these governments have gotten themselves into, right? They have deep, deep debt. And when they have deep debt, there's only so many solutions to that problem, many of which are, when in a globalized world, are not really acceptable, except for like debt forgiveness or declaring bankruptcy, which is just suicide for a government to do. However, just kind of creating a new currency and re-pegging your currency into this crypto is a very interesting and viable way for central banks to do this. Now, you can have whatever political views you want about it. This is just finance, and this is a very real option and almost necessary option for a lot of governments to do. So I think that he's actually right. I don't know if, I've never thought that Bitcoin would be like the global currency. I don't think that that's very realistic at all. I do think that's going to be a global asset. But this is a super interesting trend from a macro standpoint because sovereign cryptos are going to happen. Government issued cryptocurrencies, not necessarily for any sort of greed incentive. I shouldn't say that, but like, what Venezuela is doing is not necessarily with good intentions or necessarily like things like that. They just need money. But something like Japan, who's also in an insane debt problem. They may do it because there's nothing left to do. They can't keep dropping interest rates and piling on debt, and there has to be a breaking point, and this could be a way out. So I think that this is actually a really, really interesting way to look at the evolution of what the crypto space could become. And as it relates to it from an investor standpoint, you think to yourself, okay, what happens when a government does something like this, right? They, let's say they release a crypto. Then what happens? Who makes all the money when the government makes a huge move like that? A lot of government contractors. So who's going to be the contractors that needs to interface with these cryptocurrencies, these blockchains, right? Who's going to get the deals that help make those cryptos connect and work around the world and transact the money and do all the things that need to be done and have audits and whatever else? Those will be investable companies. Most likely they will be blockchain-based companies that have tokens. So keep an eye out on that, because I think that is going to be maybe a longer term play, but I do think it's going to be really interesting. The Winklevoss twins, our good friends Winklevoss twins, they just won a crypto exchange patent. And I have mixed feelings about this. Patents in general, I think I have mixed feelings on, but they got a patent awarded for exchange traded products, ETPs, that allow for settlement with cryptocurrencies inside it. Meaning, if you have a fund like what Galaxy just did, but it actually has cryptocurrency that needs to be settled inside of the fund itself, it's not just like an index of price, the exchange has to have certain technology, certain audit procedures, blah, 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 everything that's probably in the patent. And so the Winklevoss twins have that. So in the good sense, that technology is now in the hands of somebody, or two people, I should say, who are some of the biggest Bitcoin bulls ever. These guys want crypto and Bitcoin to be massive. And so if anybody's going to do it, they're going to do it. On the downside, it potentially can stop the amount of the number of exchanges that can have the most bullish types of funds that we need, like we talked about yesterday, right? The actual crypto settlement layer, which means that it could push exchanges and people to create ETFs that do not have crypto inside of them. And this is all still on rolling. Like, we don't know one way or another, but I think that this is going to be a good story to watch, because you want to make sure that they are creating products that do require people to own crypto, right? Maybe you start following them on Twitter and responding to them and like helping them out, or emailing into Gemini support, or there's stuff like that where you can kind of become a lobbyist in a lot of ways to make sure that this is done keep the innovation level at the height, so that we don't get more of these price indexes that are just going to make venture capitalists and private equity and bankers more money. We need more crypto settlement layers, people buying crypto through new innovative products, which is hopefully what this is going to help do. This is the kind of stuff we need. And we need to push this sort of thing, and we need less of the blah, blah, blah index fund. Now, second to last thing, Facebook, David Marcus, he is now going to spearhead the Facebook blockchain project. I don't think there's any surprise that this is a direct response to Telegram's ICO, which I believe is canceled. I don't even know if they were funding the money. I mean, it's like super sketchy. But the fact that it's that big, that popular, Facebook in true Facebook form, they're not going to let somebody else steal the show. So they announced that they're going to create a blockchain unit to start investigating this sort of thing. I think this is it's a good thing. I mean, I don't think that there's anything that's too helpful for retail investors, other than it's just kind of spreading the blockchain thing. The one thing that is really interesting, though, is that Dave Marcus is a new member of the board of Coinbase. right? Remember, I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago, he got added to the board of directors or advisors, I should say, on Coinbase. That's when it starts to get interesting, because now if Facebook is building blockchain, all of a sudden they may be working to integrate payments very easily from Coinbase. That gets super interesting from a usage standpoint. So tokenizing Facebook is not that whatever, like that's not really that helpful for anybody. Facebook using Coinbase payments and Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash, duck and cover, Bitcoin, whatever, that gets super interesting. So keep an eye on that. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to keep in mind. Last but not least, a tweet. And I'm not going to get too into this. I think it's just helpful to think about. Something that an ongoing theme that I wrestle with is this idea of price versus growth, or price versus value, I guess, or development. Meaning, how much growth and innovation and how much of this new stuff is going to keep coming out through crypto, and how much is it actually going to translate down into price movement for people like me and you? And the kind of next question is like, how much do we value that, right? How important is that? And so the question I posed is, imagine the year is 2025, so 6.5 years from now. Banks are 10% the size they were. Sending money is fast and cheap. Billions of people now have access to money and payments. The revolution is real. Right? These aren't supposed I'm not trying to be super specific and like, oh, banks are still around, or this is what the exact revolution is. It's kind of like just painting a picture of what we've been talking about happening has happened. The thing that we all want to happen, the revolution, right? That's what I meant. And the second part of the question, all of the revolution has happened, but Bitcoin is still at $10,000 and you never owned any coins that mooned. Are you still excited? 56% of you have said yes. 44% have said no. And I think that first and foremost, I don't think you should feel guilty. I don't think anyone should judge anybody based on what they respond. I think that everybody's in their own position about money, how you feel about money, how much you need money, how much you don't need money. And nobody has the right to tell anybody else like they're like what they should think about money or what they should do with their money. So I think that's first and foremost. But I also think that this is the kind of question that is uncomfortable to think about, but helps make you a better investor, especially for anybody or many of you. I would put myself in this camp that are in this for the long term. And I may trade a percentage of my holdings on a weekly or monthly basis. I may do some trades here and there, but a majority of what I have is for long term. It's just like wake me up in 10 years. Hopefully it worked out. But I do also entertain these thoughts of, I do know the growth is going to happen. That is a guarantee. I know the innovation is going to happen. I know the adoption is probably going to happen. I don't know if that translates into price. And I don't think anybody knows, because we don't know like if how it's all going to play out. We really don't. Maybe there's going to be 10, 15,000 new coins coming out every year. Maybe they make certain coins illegal. Maybe sovereign coins just make it the only coins you can have. Who knows, right? But if I know that certain things are going to happen, the growth and the innovation and probably the adoption of coins, but I'm not sure about the price, the investment thesis starts to become, well, how do I invest in the things that I do know are going to happen, and get away from this idea of, well, I need the market to move the price up, because that's more of an unknown. It's much easier, right? You just buy, hold, wait, and it goes up. And I think that there's probably going to be a bit of that, a good amount of that, I should say. I think it's definitely going to go up. But these kind of questions, this is the kind of stuff that I've been thinking a lot about, is what are all the possible scenarios that cryptocurrency goes down? like I said, it's probably never going to be like it was last year. It's going to be much more like a traditional business, early stage business cycle with new innovation, new competitors, new access channels, new ways to get involved. And there's different ways to capitalize on that, just like in between, in the 90s, so to speak. So, I don't know. I think many of you guys have had, always put awesome comments in there, and I really appreciate it, except all the friggin' Ethereum scammers. Can't get rid of them, but it's always something to think about. And look, if you're in this just for the money, great. Like, that's fine. If you're in it for the tech, if you're in it for the revolution, all of which are great, like, just do your thing. But all I'm saying is that the other pieces, the things that you're not in it for, may be more powerful than you're giving credit for. And even though you're not interested in it, you still need to think about it and potentially plan for that scenario so that you don't get hosed one way or another. All right? So we'll leave it at that. Interesting times. I think the whole week is going to be limbo. I think that hopefully we get some news or something that's going to give us some clues. And I think that next week is really going to be where a lot goes down. So I hope you all have a great day. Wednesday, now that I have that straightened out, and I will catch you tomorrow. All right, peace out.